54 seconds ago.
Is there a timeline to get Hamas to disarm?
It's not a hard timeline, but it's a line in my own mind. And at a certain point, if they
So
don't
he's just going to make it up.
do what they're supposed to do, then we'll have to do it for them.
These guys just cannot fucking stop blowing each other up.
Alert Israel conducting an airstrike in Gaza overnight, saying that Hamas terrorists attacked Israeli troops on the ground there.
You must.
Fox News alert Israel conducting an airstrike in Gaza overnight, saying that Hamas terrorists attacked Israeli troops on the ground there.
Israel is calling it a bold violation of the new ceasefire, putting the whole region on edge.
Trey Yingst is live in Tel Aviv with the very latest. Good morning, Trey. This is not good news.
Yeah, hey guys, good morning. It's not good news. The Israeli military
ceasefire?
is currently striking the Gaza Strip.
Yeah, this is this is the ceasefire. They're blowing each other up.
Hamas violated the ceasefire agreement. I spoke with one military official who said two separate attacks took place inside Israeli-controlled territory. One of them an RPG attack and the other a sniper attack conducted by Hamas. Most of the strikes this morning have taken place in the southern Gazan city of Rafah, but there is at least one report of a strike in the northern part of the enclave. This was a difficult moment for Israeli forces, having to make a decision about whether or not to start striking Gaza again. We also understand at this moment that there are warnings from the U.S. State Department against Hamas.
You've been saying this all along. Hamas not going to give up their power. Well, there are a lot of people in the Israeli military, the IDF, and also in Hamas that their entire, and I think this is more so for Hamas because like they have to leave Palestine after Gaza after this is over, right? That's part of the agreement. So they don't want to give up what they have. I think that's it. And this is probably on both sides to an extent. A lot of these people like fighting the war. They like being in the war. They don't want it to be over because it being over means their position and their their power is gone. That's it. It's their whole life. Yeah, this is their life. Like, you got people, like, listening to you. You're making decisions. You're making money, etc. No, I don't. Yeah, they absolutely do. Yeah, 100%. War makes them money, too. Well, it's more than that. It's like I think that for a lot of them, this is what... And this is... I'm not making this up. This is a recognized phenomenon. This happened after the Crusades. Fuck. I mean, like, it's not anything that's new at all. It happens after a lot of wars where you have soldiers that want to continue fighting because they've become so accustomed to it, and that's it. It's their life's work. Exactly. Yeah. War gives them purpose. Yeah. And this is a position of power and identity and everything. Yeah. Does it have a name? Well, they rename it all the time, but I mean, it's just... It depends on what you want to look at. What about Kid Crusades? That made no sense. I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, I mean, are you denying this obvious reality that I'm talking about that's been manifesting for thousands of years? Are we really going to talk about, is this the one time that it's not happening? Like, what are we doing here? It's obvious this is happening.
Overnight, a statement was released by the U.S. State Department saying, quote, the United States has informed the guarantor nations of the Gaza peace agreement of credible reports indicating an imminent ceasefire violation by Hamas against the people of Gaza. And so we're looking at two separate things here.
Yeah.
One, an attack by Hamas overnight on Israeli forces within the Gaza Strip. And two, a warning from the U.S. State Department that Hamas is planning to target Palestinian civilians or the forces that are currently opposing their rule inside Gaza.
Why would they do that? Well, I guess it's obvious why they would do that.
All of this comes as Hamas released the bodies of two additional hostages overnight.
I can understand why people don't like Israel, and I think it's very fair to like be critical and negative about Israel. But what I don't understand is why that same animosity isn't seemingly leveraged at Hamas. Like, it seems like all of the animosity and hostility is towards Israel and not Hamas. Like, they're both fucked up? Yeah, exactly. Like, I find that to be very problematic.
do know the name of one of those hostages from a kibbutz in the southern part of Israel. His name is Ronen Engel, and Israeli authorities released his name overnight after informing his family. This means that there are still 16 bodies belonging to hostages inside Gaza. Those bodies are supposed to be released by Hamas as part of this agreement, and they've been trickling out so far since the agreement went into place.
Depression here, it's about punching down. People are addicted to punching themselves in the balls. Yeah, I mean, it's just like they think Israel equals white people, Hamas and Palestine are white, brown people. That's leftist logic. Yeah. It's very confusing to me about this. It's about how much people died. Naturally, people think higher kill count side is worse. It's not nuanced. Yeah, but I mean, like, you can easily see that Hamas is bad too. I mean, I don't understand. I think that a lot of people just have a certain level of naivete whenever they're dealing with groups like this. Like, a lot of these people do want a lot of these, like, crazy insurgency militaristic groups want this stuff to continue because it's their entire life. This is their entire life they do this.
Latest information that we have right now, Israeli forces are indeed striking the Gaza Strip. The military confirms to Fox News after they say Hamas violated the ceasefire agreement. Guys?
Trey, really quick. So when Hamas violated that agreement and those rockets were shot over to Israel, were there civilians there? And then on the Israeli side, in their retaliation, are there civilians involved in that as well?
So we understand that Hamas violated the agreement by firing across the yellow line. This is the line that divides the Gaza Strip, where Israeli forces are currently in control and where Hamas is still in control. And according to this military official that I talked to, there were two separate attacks. One was an RPG attack, and the other was a sniper attack targeting Israeli forces within Gaza. The Israelis still control about 53% of the Gaza Strip as part of phase 1 of this agreement. If the ceasefire moves forward, they will pull back. But this yellow line will continue to be something that we talk about. Over the weekend, a Palestinian family was killed after an Israeli tank fired on their vehicle. Now, the Israelis say that vehicle crossed the yellow line in violation of the ceasefire, and after warning shots were fired, they targeted the vehicle. And so this yellow line...
Yeah, it's just awful. Do you think Hamas should be eradicated? I think that if it comes to that, yeah, I do think so. Hamas is a terrorist organization that martyrs their own people and is oppressive. It's an oppressive terrorist organization. They kill their own people. At the same time, I also don't want to get involved. So, like, basically, it's like, if you ask me, like, could you live, if you press a button and, like, you didn't have any Hamas, would I press the button? Like, yeah, of course I would, right? But would I want to pay billions of dollars of taxes in this? Like, maybe not. Like, it's fundamentally not an America problem, right? It's just not. It's not an America problem. Doesn't Israel do the same? People aren't asking me about Israel. Like, if every single time that people bring up criticisms of Hamas, that people keep bringing up Israel, that's not really a very good argument. It's just not. Like, yeah, obviously Hamas is problematic. I mean, like, it's not that complicated at all. Like, it's not. And so, anyway, my point is that, yeah, of course Hamas is bad. I mean, the best case scenario, in my opinion, is that they give them some way to just leave, go live somewhere else, and there's no war. It might not be fair because obviously a lot of these guys deserve probably to go on trial or be killed or something like that. But I think it's the cleanest and easiest thing that spares the most lives, right? So, like, if I had the capability to make a decision, that's what I would do, right? Is I would just say, like, okay, walk away, leave, live your life the way you want, but you can't stay here. How do you think Hamas came to life? I mean, the same way every other terrorist organization comes to life. I mean, there's like 50 different ways. I agree with you about Middle East involvement with Israel, but you don't live in a bubble of actions in Middle East oil. Yeah, sure, you're right. I mean, absolutely. Where would they go? Why would anyone take them in? That's not our problem. I mean, really, I don't know. Like, I mean, I have no idea. But, like, again, if you're a terrorist organization and you're blowing up and killing your own civilians and executing them publicly, you know, at one point, like, I mean, how is anybody bringing up, like, why is it that people can't just say, yeah, that's bad? That's obviously bad. It's obviously a bad thing, period. Like, why even bring up anything else besides that? It's obviously they're bad.
will continue to be a sticking point in the negotiations about where exactly the line is located. Of course, the Gaza Strip is around 30 miles long, and so it's very difficult to know the exact points along the enclave where Israeli forces are in control and where Hamas is in control. But the fact that Hamas has launched this blatant attack against Israeli forces is an indication that they are not adhering to the ceasefire agreement. To fire a rocket-propelled grenade and to conduct a sniper attack is a clear indication that Hamas still wants to fight inside Gaza. And Israeli forces have been very clear they will strike the Gaza Strip if Hamas violates the agreement. And already today, we understand, according to sources in Jerusalem, that Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is set to hold security consultations as a result of this Hamas ceasefire violation. And there could be further actions by the Israelis. And of course, we do expect more communication to the intermediaries to try and get this back on track from a diplomatic angle. We know that Vice President J.D. Vance and also U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff are scheduled to visit Israel this week.
I think any realistic person knows that this doesn't end well for Hamas no matter what. Right? I mean, we all know that. Like, if Hamas stays there, it's just going to cause Israel and America and the other countries in the area to either bomb them or allow them to be bombed. That's what's going to happen. One way or another. I was going to stop telling me that topic. You say dumbass? Well, I don't look like a... What about this do I look like a dumbass on? Like, let me go back. We're going to pull somebody up. We'll see what's going on here. So what about this isn't true that I'm saying here? There is realistically no universe where Hamas maintains any level of control and any level of power in Gaza or Palestine. There is no universe where that happens. So the longer that they are there, the more people die. That's the reality. Now, you might not think that's fair, but you should recognize the truth of this. There's no comment. Obviously, no comment. There's never any comments about this. And, yeah, eradicate Hamas and don't let Israel occupy Gaza. It's that simple. Well, I'll see if this person's going to respond. Is there anything else that you're looking at here? Hamas is bad. You should look into how it was created and how it was funded by Israel to survive. So then, okay, so you agree, though, right? I mean, like, so what conclusion that I'm drawing? Like, why does it matter how Hamas was created? Hamas was voted in by people in, like, what, 2006 or something like that, right? By Palestinians. And then, like, even then the election was like, it was like a weird election. I'm like, what does that have to do with it? I mean, most of the people that are alive in Gaza, aren't most of the people in Gaza now under 18 anyway? So they weren't even alive for the election, and probably the majority of the ones that are over 18 probably weren't even voting in it. Like, it's not even an argument. Like, what does that even have to do with it? Like, yeah, this bad thing happened a long time ago. So what does that have to do with now? What conclusion is this? Is different here. Yeah, you can't fix the past. No, you can't. You can. I'll give this person one more response, and then we got to move on. Okay. Israel created Hamas to oppose Palestinian government. If Trump eradicates Hamas, Netanyahu just created another terrorist group. Well, you have to understand that, like, again, do you see there is no peace option with Hamas being in there controlling it? Like, if you don't understand that, you are delusional. You are absolutely delusional if you think that there will ever be peace with Hamas there. There's no response at all. And they're already terrorists. Yeah, they're already terrorists. I mean, there was no voting. Hamas killed and massacred Palestinians. Authorities were ruling over the Strip. Well, even if there was, what I'm saying is that the people there don't even have any accountability for that anyway. So the point is that
we were leading and flags home.
Like, if they're fighting and continuing this, all they're doing is ensuring the death of more of their people. Whether you think this is right or wrong or anything else, this is an inevitable reality. They are in a losing position. They have almost no allies. Alban. Well, somebody telling me that I'm stupid, I don't know what I'm talking about. If you're not going to explain anything, then that's it. Your solution is to remove the result, that soil caused the problem there. What do you think this, like, I mean, again, your solution, what is the solution? To let Hamas stay there? That's obviously not going to happen. It's clearly not going to happen. Everybody knows that. Like, I mean, again, there's too many people that think like that they're so idealistic, and there's so much of a it's like suicidal idealism. That's not true. It's not what's going to happen.
And they're going to be discussing how to keep this ceasefire in place and ensure that it doesn't collapse.
So, Trey, let's step back for a second. Do we have any indication that something led up to this? Did we see this coming? And also, has Hamas officially said anything about why they're doing this?
They have not. They have talked on propaganda channels on Telegram and other messaging sites that they use to release propaganda, confirming that they are launching attacks against forces inside Gaza that oppose their rule. And we saw last week those horrific execution videos of Hamas killing civilians they claimed that stole aid or were working with the Israelis. As for the attacks on Israeli forces, this isn't surprising. In the past, when there have been ceasefire in place and agreements that were reached, not only during this war, but previous wars that we have covered, Hamas has violated the agreement because they want to continue the fight against Israel. And oftentimes they'll do it in these very small ways, single attacks here and there. But what the Israeli military wants to do is set a precedent, a red line. And so if any of these attacks happen, according to officials that we've spoken with, they will immediately respond because they want a level of deterrence. The issue here is if this spirals out of control and the ceasefire collapses, because Hamas understands they no longer have the leverage of living hostages, but
They never did. And I think that the real leverage they lost is the fact that the other countries were united against them now, and they don't have any allies. There is no happy ending for Hamas. Like, one way or another, they're dead. That's it. Like, whether you think this is right or wrong, that's the way it is.
Tellus, still alive?
Israel has overwhelming, massive amounts of force. They have the go-ahead, the passive go-ahead from a lot of the other countries in the area to do whatever they need to do, probably to wipe them out. America will support them.
My blades will serve.
They're cooked. It's over. The fact that they're shooting rockets in and doing this, all they're doing is signing their own people up to get martyred. That's it. Always be careful of a cornered animal. Most animals, after they get cornered, get captured and killed.
still do have the bodies of 16 others.
That's why you corner them.
Hamas has not ever acted in good faith when it comes to these negotiations, and they have often violated ceasefire agreements. And so this isn't a surprising moment. It's a moment that the Israeli military prepared for. There are contingency plans in place. There is still drone monitoring over the Gaza Strip and the ability for the Israeli Air Force to strike Gaza. But it is certainly concerning from a diplomatic level, because the Trump administration wants this ceasefire to move forward. They want the war to be over. And it is very challenging with Hamas still in control of just under half of the Gaza Strip, because they are now controlling the streets of Gaza in the areas that they are still operating in. There are gunmen in the streets. They are executing their opponents.
Jesus.
And as we saw early this morning, they are now launching new attacks on Israeli forces.
Wow.
So, Trey, you've been covering this from the beginning, and you've been covering these conflicts for many years now. What is your sort of gut feeling? Does this feel like something that is about to completely unravel, or is there still some hope that this might be a skirmish and that they might get back to the original ceasefire?
So I can tell you what's happening behind the scenes right now. Not only Israeli officials, but likely American officials, Egyptian officials, and Qatari officials are speaking every hour to try to get this back on track. The challenging part here, having covered this region all the way back to the war in 2014, is that Hamas is an organization that's very challenging to control. They don't operate in the way that a normal state would operate, or even a paramilitary
What a
group.
surprise.
This is a terrorist organization, and so even if their officials in Qatar or in Turkey or even inside the Gaza Strip say they're willing to adhere to the ceasefire agreement, it's a splintered organization that
exactly. I mean, like, you're going to have, the thing is that you probably have all kinds of people inside of the organization that want different things. And I bet that's probably what's happening. Like Antifa, kind of. Like, it's not the same thing, but it's like kind of a vague comparison where you have like a group like this. There's not complete top-down leadership. So, of course, this is going to happen. Obviously, it's going to happen.
fighting with guerrilla tactics.
Yep.
And so they can easily launch attacks in different locations to try to pressure Israeli forces that are inside Gaza. And the fear here is that this unravels into a broader ceasefire violation by Hamas, and then the war resumes, and that there's pressure on the Israelis to basically continue the war. Remember, Hamas agreed to disarm. They agreed to lay down their weapons. And I asked President Trump about this in our interview last week, and he said he still expects Hamas to adhere to the agreement. The challenging part here is if they don't lay down their weapons and they continue to fire on Israeli forces inside Gaza, the war is going to resume. And so that's the negotiating part. That's what comes next. There will be consultations to take place not only today, but into next week with Egyptian and Qatari officials to try to send a message to Hamas that's very simple. The war will resume if you don't lay down your weapons and stop these attacks on Israeli forces. They still do have a small arsenal of weapons inside Gaza, and as they've shown today, they're willing to use them.
Yeah. Really a fragile situation with a lot of breaking news.
I don't see how anybody thinks that this isn't going to end with them being gone. Like, I don't even know why they're trying to do this. It's just, again, you're all going to be martyrs. And I mean, Israel has an overwhelming military force. There's no win condition here. There's nothing you're going to do. You're just, at best, you're just getting more of your own people killed. There's literally no way that they come out ahead.
At this hour, Trey Yings, thanks for getting up for us. Please keep us posted. We will bring you back.
Are you taking Israel's word for who started this again? Who cares who started it? What if Israel started it? It doesn't matter. It's still true. They should, every day that they stay there armed with their military is a day that more people will probably get killed. It's inevitable. They can't win. They won't win. It's not even close to winning.
Hello there.
They don't even have a chance. What are they doing?
As news warrants, Trey Yings live in Tel Aviv.
Thanks, Trey.
Thanks, Trey.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And okay, Ukraine, you should have laid down arms long ago. Well, they don't have to because they have the U.S. and the EU supporting them, right? Like, did you ever? I mean, like, I understand, like, that might be, like, I'm gonna just ban you for that because it's like one of those, like, okay, I'm gonna misunderstand this on purpose in order to try to get, like, oh, I'm gonna be, I've got a little smart comment, right? Like, you know, the Hamas to, like, Hamas is the same as Ukraine. It's just ridiculous. Number one, and number two, it's not even true. Yeah, Hamas can't and won't win, but what if they refuse to lose? What do you think happens whenever they refuse to lose? Really, what do you think that the actual outcome for that is? Because I know what the outcome is. Everybody knows what the outcome is. I don't know why people are like, there's like some sort of, I don't know really what this is. This is like a mass like delusion that people have. Yeah, how do you find the energy to deal with retards like this who deliberately try to misunderstand you? It doesn't really matter to me. Yeah, I don't really think about it. So you're saying genocide's okay? What? What are you talking about? I'm telling you what I think is going to happen. That's what I think is going to happen, is that if they don't disarm, Israel is just going to keep bombing them until they're effectively gone. That's what's going to happen. There's nothing that's going to stop this. All of the other countries in the area have effectively okayed this by signing the agreement that Hamas needed to disarm. They're not disarming. They're going to get bombed. That's what's going to happen. That it doesn't matter what you think the right thing is. You can debate that on Reddit all you want, but that is the bottom line. That's the reality. And until they do that, more people will die. That's it. I don't know what else even to say. I feel like it's actually just that simple, isn't it?
Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. You know, slowly but surely, Bill Maher is changing. It seems like he's reaching his breaking point on so many issues. The guy is snapping. And sure, you know, on surface, he'll still claim, oh, I'm a Democrat. He aligns with the left, right? And I'm sure he does. It's hard for these legacy classical style liberals to drop their identity and what they've been doing for decades. But deep down inside, I think it's fairly obvious Bill Maher knows that we're not the evil, deplorable fascists. No, we have been right on so many issues. And it seems he's now just finding the confidence to actually frickin' say it. And you could tell it's been a slow process, you know, he started off with some of the easier stuff like the woke nonsense, the gender stuff, but now it seems Bill Maher's taking it to a whole other level. He's finally admitting what we've been saying for years, that mass migration is destroying Western nations. No more of this la-di-da utopia nonsense, this Nancy Pelosi's favorite quote, diversity is our strength. No, this mass migration scam that's been thrusted upon us by these globalist Davos elite. It's been a social experiment where we're the guinea pigs, and the result has been utter disaster. No other way to describe it, and now it seems even Bill Maher agrees with us. I gotta tell you, I never expected making this video. Bill Maher is taking it to a whole other level. Alright folks, so just take a look at, again, the slow but sure red pilling of Bill Maher. He hasn't crossed the line yet, but he's basically surrendered on almost every single issue.
Sweden opened its borders to over 1.5 million immigrants since 2010, and now 20% of its citizens are foreign-born, and its education system is tanking, and it has Europe's highest rate of gangland killings. And one result is that the far-right parties are in the government now there for the first time. To which liberals say blaming immigrants for the rising crime rate is racist. Yeah, but is it true? Of course it's true. It's not a coincidence the quality of life went down after the Somali gangs started a drug turf war using hand grenades. Calling it racist doesn't solve the problem. It hands future elections to someone who will solve the problem.
And I gotta tell you, that is a significant change. Don't forget, Bill Maher's the guy who last said this.
But in 1984, I remember walking around London like it was all white. It was all white.
But you go outside of London now, but now it's totally changed.
It went from, I read this in Andrew Sullivan's column, it went from, in 50 years, it went from 86% white to 36% white. Now, this is not a complaint. See, if we were conservatives, this would be like a lament. Great.
It's a fact.
It's a fact, and it's a happy fact.
And if you can't discuss it...
Just don't tell me we're living in a year we're not living in. We're living in the year when London is mostly people of color.
Yes, it is.
And I'm applauding it.
Yep.
Happy for you. Happy for it.
Okay.
But let's live in the year we're living in.
It's... You go to Windsor Castle, okay? And the town, of course, is called Windsor. And it used to be, when I was a kid, all English tea shops with china, and everybody used to go there for afternoon tea. And you'd go to Windsor Park and watch some polo. And now you go around there, there's no more tea shops.
Right.
None of that.
Right.
It's Arabic restaurants.
Right.
It's Jamaican restaurants. Right. It's Chinese. It is a complete and utter melting pot. And it's great.
And it's great.
It's great.
He went from basically endorsing the Great Replacement theory to now, it seems, ringing the alarm bell. And Sweden's his case study. Sweden now has the highest rate of gang shootings in all of Europe. They got Somali gangs using grenades in their gang battles, Syrian criminal networks running human trafficking rings, turf wars happening in all kinds of different no-go zones in the country. And 20 years ago, Sweden was a freaking paradise. Crime was almost non-existent. Certainly not brazen, broad daylight gang warfare and shootings. And well, what has changed in the last 20 years? I can't put my finger on it. Obviously, this mass migration scam. And we've been warning, we've been saying, slow down, slow down. This is a disaster. Eventually, the pendulum's gonna swing. And now leftists are shocked. They're shocked that all of a sudden, right-wing parties across the Western world are starting to rise up. Well, it's exactly like Bill Maher said. Ignore the reality long enough, and you end up handing your country over to the populist right. And that's what's happening across the board. Because good governance has to be based in reality, not this globalist, naive utopia fairy tale. Multiculturalism this and multiculturalism that. It's innately good, inherently good. You know, maybe a little bit of it can be good if it's done right, but mass migration, mass forced multiculturalism on an industrial scale with no actual process of assimilation, that is obviously a recipe for disaster. And clearly in this case, it has failed spectacularly. And as much as the left wants to deny it, the reality is sentiment has shifted entirely to the extent where Bill Maher is doing these kinds of monologues. And you also got some mainstream media polling showing numbers like this. This is a viral video from a couple years ago.
You have been voting in the text and online vote today, so here is the result. Is multiculturalism working? Here is what you told us. 5% of those of you who voted said yes, it is. 95% of those of you who voted this morning said no, it isn't.
95% of those polled in that European poll say that multiculturalism has been a disaster. What's the argument now? That 95% of those people who all feel the same way, they're all just a bunch of racists? No, of course not. It's people finally telling the truth. The globalist immigration agenda has failed. And while I know there's a lot of self-loathing, self-hating people who would love to see nothing more than the West burning down to the ground, the erasure of their culture, this embrace of what's known as a post-national state, they are a fringe minority. Most people want to preserve the culture that defines them, their families, what their ancestors fought literal wars to defend and protect. And the truth is, a lot of people I think are starting to realize that no country, no culture, especially not the thriving good cultures that our forefathers and ancestors have built, can survive without unity. You need shared values, shared identity, a basic set of rules that everybody, or at least most people, respect. And in the West, we used to have that. And I think it was even preserved with low levels of immigration that were controlled. People came in and really embraced the American way of life. They learned English. They became patriotic. They believed in Western law and hard work, free speech, the Constitution. But now this mass migration scam has flooded so many Western nations with groups from incompatible cultures who seem to have no interest in assimilation, and there seems to be no political will to assimilate them in the first place. And so what do you get? You get the fragmentation of society. You get ghettos. You get subversive groups moving into Western nations with a political agenda. You know, certain groups that want to conquer us rather than assimilate. You get clan loyalties, essentially, tribal enclaves, parallel societies, balkanization. And once that happens, well, things start to deteriorate quite quickly. And don't be so naive to think that we're special, that we're different. You know, sure, Rome fell, but we're above all that. It could never happen to us. No, it could certainly happen to us, especially if we lose track of what made Western civilization in the first place. It's time to start ignoring reality, and it's time to start protecting what is clearly worth protecting and preserving. And that is not racist. That doesn't make you a white nationalist. That makes you an American or a European, a Canadian, an Australian. That makes you a patriot. Everybody around the world is allowed to be a patriot except for us in the Western world. That right there is a subversive thought. That is a demoralization virus that should never be accepted. There is something worth preserving here. An unfettered mass migration is the biggest threat to everything we hold near and dear. Again, not racism, basic common sense, basic patriotism. And it's not about skin color, it's about culture. Anyways, that's pretty much what I got for you guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.
Gaming feminists just discovered Islam and it's not going well. The Gina Davis Institute on Gender in Media, a self-proclaimed moral authority on representation, has become a shockingly influential force behind some of gaming's most loathed modern trends, from forced diversity quotas to algorithmic inclusivity audits that reduce creative work to box-ticking exercises. In previous uploads, I've exposed how they do this using literal box-ticking documents within their GDI playbook, a framework explicitly designed to quantify diversity in character design, dialogue, and narrative structure. According to their own website, this system has been adopted across the entertainment industry, influencing everything from Hollywood productions to video game development pipelines. What began as guidance for fairer representation has quietly evolved into a creative straitjacket that dictates how stories are told. The result has been devastating for storytelling. Writers and artists are no longer free to create characters that feel real, flawed or even beautiful, they're pressured to conform to ideological templates that value messaging over meaning. Worse still, the Institute's philosophy reduces creativity to compliance, framing women as fragile collectives in need of narrative protection and treating sexuality and identity as statistics to be managed. The outcome is a generation of lifeless characters stripped of individuality, complexity and humanity. It's why so many modern AAA games feel soulless, their casts shaped not by imagination but by fear of breaking the rules written by people who no longer understand what makes a good story. And get this, the very same group of people who insist that pride flags should appear in every game, in every menu and on every loading screen are now the ones preaching to us about Islam, providing us with yet another playbook to scrutinise, yet this one is dedicated to completely how they think Muslim women should be shown on screen. So please sit back, relax and prepare yourself, because today we're diving into one of the most unintentionally poor documents ever written about religion and representation. This is what happens when gaming feminists and gender theorists who can't write a believable woman to save their lives decide they're qualified to redefine Islam for the entertainment industry. It's preachy, it's patronising, and it's just as out of touch as you would expect. So with that said, I am Lady Decade, and if you enjoy a good counter narrative, then hit that subscribe button. Let's talk about the gaming feminists who are pretending to understand Islam. Religion plays a bigger role in some people's lives than gaming ever could, though judging by how some of these activists write, you'd think that they're the ones founding a new faith. But if you'd rather spend your time playing games rather than being preached at about them, let me remind you that I can help you access all of the best modern releases for next to nothing. Use my links to get 38% off Silent Hill F, 29% off Black Myth Wukong, 24% off Final Fantasy Tactics The Ivalice Chronicles, and up to 90% off of pretty much any game that you can think of. So grab some bargains, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this video. The Surviving to Thriving the Muslim Women on-Screen Test is a checklist created by the Gina Davis Institute on Gender in Media that's meant to assess how Muslim women are portrayed in film, television and games. It's designed to measure whether characters move beyond stereotypes such as being oppressed or voiceless, and instead are shown as thriving individuals with agency, depth and positive representation. As one would expect though, if you have watched any of my other videos on GDI, in practice it of course functions like yet another ideological scoring system, reducing complex cultural and religious identities to a set of criteria for studios to tick off in order to appear progressive, rather than encouraging genuine understanding or nuanced storytelling. In its Muslim Women on-Screen test, the Institute warns creators against what they refer to as exotic or highly sexualized depictions of Muslim women, citing characters such as wives, belly dancers or enslaved sex workers as products of Islam's image problem. While it might sound noble at first glance, the irony is that this statement exposes a spectacular level of ignorance the very moment the document begins. The authors confidently wade into history armed with nothing but buzzwords, blissfully unaware that the dance they're referencing predates Islam by several millennia. Archaeological and historical evidence traces its roots back to ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia. Ritual movements tied to fertility and goddess worship devoted to deities like Isis and Ishtar long before the Quran existed. It's the kind of mistake that only happens when activists try to rewrite history with nothing but a few bad tags and a sociology degree. In fact, the UCLA Encyclopedia of Egyptology notes that the oldest depictions of dance come from the pre-dynastic period, 4000 to 3200 BC, depicting female figures, perhaps goddesses or priestesses, dancing with upraised arms. Islam, by contrast, was founded in the 7th century AD. That represents a historical gap of over 3 millennia, yet somehow a 21st century media consultancy group has decided to conflate this ancient pre-Islamic tradition with a modern Muslim identity stereotype. And worst of all, they call that progress. The irony, of course, is that in its zeal to protect Muslim women from misrepresentation, the Gina Davis Institute has ended up committing a quiet act of cultural erasure. An ancient multicultural art form has been stripped of its diverse origins and repackaged as a purely Islamic symbol, with thousands of years of history bulldozed to fit a modern activist narrative. What was once a shared human heritage has been overwritten by ideology, a perfect example of how identity politics can erase the very cultures it pretends to defend. For the record, belly dancing isn't universally accepted within the Islamic world. It's outright banned in countries such as Saudi Arabia, Iran and Afghanistan, where conservative interpretations of Islam view the dance as indecent or un-Islamic. Yet, in other Muslim-majority nations, it remains an integral part of local culture. In Egypt, Lebanon and Turkey, for example, belly dancing is woven into social celebrations, weddings and regional folklore, not as a religious expression, but as a form of artistic and cultural heritage which, as already mentioned, predates Islam by centuries. It's a reminder that the Islamic world is not a monolith. Cultural practices vary enormously from one country to another. Reducing a dance with ancient, diverse roots to a single religious lens ignores the very cultural richness that makes it endure. Then again, what else can we expect from the Gina Davis Institute? Both the Muslim Women on Screen test and the GDI playbook claim to guide creators towards more respectful portrayals, presenting themselves as tools of cultural sensitivity, frameworks to ensure Muslim women aren't depicted as oppressed, exotic or background decoration. Yet reading them closely reveals something far more troubling. Islam isn't treated as a vast and complex civilization with its own history, philosophy and internal diversity, but as just another checkbox in the Western activist spreadsheet of marginalised identities. Its rich traditions are flattened to conform to modern Western ideological norms, regardless of whether those norms have any foundation in Islamic belief or historical reality. Much like many of the games they influence, GDI produce some truly cringe-worthy reading. One of the most striking issues within the Institute's broader work is its assumption that Western feminist frameworks can simply be mapped onto non-Western faiths, as though the cultural and theological dynamics of Islam mirrored those of secular democracies. It treats all women as seeking liberation in the same way and for the same reasons, collapsing vast moral and spiritual differences into a single Western narrative of progress. Even the Institute's own documentation acknowledges this shortcoming, admitting that the entire framework applies Western feminist theory to non-Western cultures without adequately accounting for how colonialism and Orientalism created the stereotypes they're trying to address. This isn't a minor oversight, but an ideological blind spot. The feminism shaping the GDI's guidance emerged from a post-Enlightenment worldview that prioritises personal autonomy and liberation from tradition, values that naturally conflict with religions, such as Islam, which define freedom through submission to divine law rather than independence from it. This kind of thinking isn't new. In fact, it's part of a much older Western habit of moral grandstanding disguised as compassion. Even the anthropologist Laila Abu-Lughod, hardly a conservative voice, warned about this in her essay, Do Muslim Women Really Need Saving?, pointing out how Western elites use the language of women's rights as a moral cover for cultural interference, treating the veil as a symbol of oppression rather than an expression of faith. The women of GDI are a new self-appointed moral class using liberation as a justification for lecturing everyone else. And now it's apparently with PowerPoint slides and diversity jargon. The same moral pattern is evident in the Institute's language, only now the Western elites have been replaced by media consultants and the rhetoric of salvation has been rebranded as inclusion. Muslim women are no longer portrayed as needing rescue from despotic husbands or patriarchal societies, but from portrayals that fail to reflect Western progressive values. This isn't to say that criticism of injustice in Muslim societies is invalid, far, far, far from it, but it must begin from an understanding of how those societies define morality, not from a framework that treats secular feminism as a universal truth. In trying to liberate Muslim Muslim women, the Institute reproduces the very colonial logic it claims to have outgrown. Only now the sermon comes via corporate diversity workshops. Perhaps the most revealing flaw in this framework is how quietly it folds Islam into the language of Western identity politics, treating it not as a faith rooted in divine law and centuries of civilization, but just another marginalised group to be slotted neatly alongside the LGBTQIA+ community, racial minorities, and women in STEM. It's an absurd reduction, a world religion followed by nearly 2 billion people across vastly different cultures, boiled down to a checkbox on the same activist spreadsheet as office diversity training. It's the literal height of Western narcissism to assume that a global faith needs to be explained or reframed through the same buzzwords used in HR seminars. The idea that Muslim women in Cairo or Jakarta exist within the same socio-political category as corporate interns in San Francisco isn't cultural diversity, it's condescension disguised as compassion. This approach doesn't elevate Islam, it belittles it. Islam isn't a lifestyle choice or a social identity, it's a complete moral and metaphysical system that shapes law, art, ethics and daily life for billions. It's patronising in the extreme, as though an ancient civilization needs validation from a Hollywood think tank. The self-importance and moral hubris of these people disgusts me. This bizarre view of where one of the world's major religions fits into modern society runs through the DEI playbook like a thread of unexamined ideology. The document openly assumes that all so-called marginalised groups share the same political priorities: LGBTQIA+, affirmation, gender fluidity and other distinctly Western concepts, without the slightest acknowledgement that the global Muslim community holds an entirely different set of moral, cultural and theological beliefs. It's a comforting fiction, the notion that every group share a common struggle and therefore a common set of values, but it collapses under even mild theological scrutiny. Islam, by its own definition, is not an identity. It's a literal submission to divine law. Its moral code doesn't sway with the latest social media trend. It's grounded in the Quran and over a millennium of scholarship. But try telling that to the self-appointed visionaries at the GDI, who seem to think that they can cram a 1400-year-old religion into a gaming textbook about gender theory. In their rush to make everything fit into their regressive intersectional mould, they've managed the impressive feat of erasing the very convictions they pretend to celebrate. The idiocy is astounding. Not only are Muslims very different from the other groups they use as examples in their intersectional framework, but the numbers make that painfully obvious. According to the Pew Research Centre's Global Divide on Homosexuality 2020, a median of 70% of Muslims across 34 countries said that homosexuality should be rejected by society. In the 2021 follow-up, Religion and Views on Morality, that figure rose to over 80% in nations such as Jordan, Egypt and Indonesia. Yet, the GDI's writers barrel ahead as though none of this exists, as if a few pages of inclusive storytelling guidelines can overwrite 14 centuries of theology. Most of us are very aware of this moral worldview, which is grounded in their divine law. As Dr. Yusuf Al-Qaradawi put into his piece, The Lawful and the Prohibited in Islam, the consensus of scholars is clear that homosexual acts are haram, or forbidden, and carry severe moral condemnation. No amount of intersectional wishful thinking is going to make that disappear. Yet, the Gina Davis Institute's framework imagines a seamless intersection where Islamic devotion, gender fluidity and sexual liberation coexist without conflict. A vision that may please Western corporations keen to advertise inclusivity, but which bears little resemblance to the lived theology of most Muslims worldwide. This ideological flattening doesn't empower representation, it alienates it. It implies that belief is negotiable and that acceptance in media depends on conforming to values imported from California rather than drawn from the Quran. The result is a curious form of secular paternalism. Islam is praised, but only in its sanitized, Western-approved form, one that mirrors progressive ideals rather than authentic faith. Genuine belief, with its laws, obligations, and moral boundaries, becomes something to be edited out of the frame. In other words, Muslims are welcome to the table, provided that they keep quiet about what they actually believe in. This inconsistency becomes even more apparent in how the Institute handles religious conservatism across different faiths. In the playbook, Christian traditionalism is often portrayed as reactionary, the realm of fundamentalists who must evolve. Yet, when similar convictions appear within Islam, opposition to abortion, emphasis on modesty and defined family roles, the tone softens. Muslim characters are not condemned for their values, but recast as victims of patriarchy or misunderstood progressives awaiting Western enlightenment. In effect, the Institute doesn't reject religion outright, it just demands that faith be edited, softened, including LGBTQIA+ Muslims, encouraging writers to present the same-sex attraction within Islamic settings as an act of courage or liberation. The intention is inclusivity. The result is distortion. In practice, it amounts to what critics have called gay washing, writing religious characters to affirm Western social values rather than reflecting the reality of their faith. By celebrating fictional Muslims who freely embrace lifestyles that Islam explicitly forbids, the Institute replaces authenticity with projection. The result is a cinematic illusion, characters who exist not as believers with inner conflict, but as narrative instruments designed to reassure Western audiences of their own moral virtue. Such portrayals don't challenge prejudice, they replace it with a softer kind of Orientalism, one where the East is no longer mysterious but conveniently progressive. All of this reminds a quiet paradox at the heart of the Gina Davis Institute's model. Its authors pride themselves on dismantling stereotypes, yet their work depends on creating idealised Muslims who conform to Western liberal sensibilities. By refusing to engage with Islam on its own theological terms, they produce characters who may please Hollywood but feel alien to the vast majority of Muslims worldwide. One passage from the Muslim Women on-Screen test reveals this bias with striking clarity. A harmful portrayal, it says, includes any scene where a Muslim woman is shown as being primitive, backwards, or otherwise out of touch with modern society. For example, lacking modern technology, wearing outdated clothes, or being intolerant of others' ideas. On the surface, that sounds like a warning against caricature. In reality, it makes for accurate historical portrayals being almost impossible. A religious person, by definition, is bound by their faith. They cannot simply adopt every modern idea without abandoning the very principles that make them devout. Expecting believers to mirror secular values isn't progress. It's yet more cultural erasure dressed up as empathy. If a filmmaker depicted 16th century Istanbul authentically, so veiled noblewomen in embroidered robes, scholars teaching in madrasas, or merchants trading in the bazaars, the work would automatically fail the Institute's test. And its logic, merely placing Muslim women in their own historical setting, becomes proof of regression. This approach exposes a distinctly Western bias that equates modernity with moral progress and tradition with inferiority. As historian Darian Meacham observed in the Journal of Cultural Critique published in 2023, a medieval knight isn't called primitive, yet an Ottoman noblewoman in period dress is. European history is permitted to exist on its own terms, rich in nuance and heritage, while non-Western history is tolerated only when reframed as an early step towards liberal modernity. Can you see the glaring double standards? The irony is that many of the virtues the Institute celebrates, so scholarship, tolerance, artistic achievement and scientific inquiry, were flourishing in Muslim civilization centuries before the European Enlightenment. To erase these depictions out of fear of appearing primitive is to erase the very history that helped inspire Europe's own intellectual revival. In attempting to protect Muslim women from misrepresentation, the Institute ends up infantilizing them, implying that their cultures can only be shown as modern if they conform visually to Western ideals of progress. By modern Western standards, every culture before 1960 apparently needs saving. And in applying that logic, the Institute doesn't dismantle stereotypes, it simply replaces the old Orientalist lens with a new ideologically sanitized one. Another revealing feature of the Gina Davis Institute's model lies in who it allows to speak for Muslim identity. Both the GDI playbook and the Muslim Women on-Screen test advise creators to consult organisations such as Muslim Casting, the Pillars Fund and the Muslim List when seeking authenticity. On paper, that sounds responsible, a safeguard against misrepresentation, but in practice it creates a controlled echo chamber where only certain ideological viewpoints are permitted. These groups, while entitled to their activism, largely represent a particular strand of American progressivism, one that blends faith specifically with American liberal social values. Missing are the conservative scholars who defend orthodoxy, reformers who challenge it, and secular or ex-Muslim voices who critique it. The result is a narrow ideological bandwidth dressed up as diversity. This narrowing of perspective creates what might be called curated authenticity, research filtered through ideological pre-approval. Writers are encouraged to do their homework, but only with sources already aligned with the Institute's worldview. What remains is an illusion of inclusivity, diversity of appearance, masking uniformity of thought, and in choosing whose voices may be heard, the Institute reveals its real concern is not diversity of belief, but control of narrative. In the end, the Gina Davis Institute's consultation service doesn't expand representation, it places it. The truth, though, is that beyond the policy papers and Hollywood guidelines, real Muslim women are already reclaiming their own stories. Across the Middle East, North Africa and the diaspora, many have revived Raqs Sharqi, the traditional dance mislabeled in the West as belly dancing, not as rebellion against Islam, but as a reaffirmation of cultural heritage. As one Egyptian dancer told SharqiDance.com in 2025, it is part of who we are, not a religious statement, not rebellion, simply a celebration of life. At the same time, many devout Muslim women choose to reject Raqs Sharqi entirely, seeing it as inconsistent with Islamic modesty. Their stance is equally valid because it reflects personal conviction rather than the moral templates imposed by outsiders. Between cultural expression and religious restraint lies a spectrum of belief that no self-serving checklist could ever capture. This diversity extends far beyond art. Muslims form the most racially and ethnically varied faith group on earth. According to the Pew Research Centre, only about 14% are Arab. The majority live in South and Southeast Asia, with vast populations in Indonesia, Pakistan, Bangladesh and India, alongside millions across Africa, Europe and the Americas. The Institute's tendency to speak of a single Muslim experience ignores not only this global variety, but also Islam's internal pluralism. Sunni, Shia, Ibadi, Sufi, Ahmadi and more, along with its role in the civil rights movements from Algeria's liberation to the activism of Malcolm X. No matter how much GDI want to try, an authentic representation can't be engineered through Western guilt or corporate frameworks. It begins with listening to historians, theologians and believers themselves rather than projecting fashionable theories onto them. The Gina Davis Institute undoubtedly thinks it means well. Its mission statements drip with the usual corporate sanctimony, a self-congratulatory promise to reshape culture through equality, fairness and inclusion. But its handling of Islam exposes what this project really is: moral imperialism dressed up as progress. The Institute's writers seem to believe that the only path to virtue is submission to Western social dogma. They talk about representation while steamrolling over the very cultures they claim to defend, rewriting centuries of belief and history to fit the worldview of a Silicon Valley HR seminar. The Institute claims to be defending Muslim women, But what it's really protecting is the Western ego, the smug conviction that everyone everywhere would be happier if they just thought like us. If Hollywood genuinely wanted to portray Muslim women with honesty, it wouldn't consult the people trying to turn their religion into a marketing exercise, it would actually listen to the women themselves. Now, I must admit that this was a particularly heavy topic today, so to recover you might feel like having some fun. Use my links to get 38% off Silent Hill F, 29% off Black Myth Wukong, 24% off Final Fantasy Tactics The Ivalice Chronicles, and up to 90% off pretty much any game that you can think of. And alternatively, if you want a break from discussing ancient religions, why not check out my video on an ancient console? That's right, over on the Lady Arcade YouTube channel, I have just taken a deep dive look at the Vectrix. Subscribe to both channels and I'll see you all again soon.